Welcome, ladies.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Hi, Fontaine. Hi, Carline.
Nice seeing you again. So we are talking about Mary Cassatt.
Yes, yes. Okay, so as an American, she was the only non-European involved with the French Impressionists, and she showed her work at 4 out of 8 of their exhibitions. And actually, she was one of the group's leaders.
Group leaders. And so this is Mary Cassatt we have here. This is the lady you're talking about, Mary Cassatt. She's a little older. Did she start painting in her old age when she gets older? Hello?
Fontaine, you got to
Yeah,
unmute.
yeah. She started young, very young.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
So
Go ahead, Fontaine. Why don't you go ahead and start?
Okay. Well, at that time, there were all kinds of breakthroughs for women during Cassatt's lifetime. By the 1840s and 50s, women were being accepted in academies in the U.S. And as you recall, Fidelia Bridges went to the Pennsylvania Academy in Philadelphia. And in fact, out of 1,000 artists living in Paris at that time, 1/3 of them were women.
That's amazing. Of course, it helped that Mary Cassatt was a member of a socially prominent family. Her father was a successful stockbroker, and her mother came from an old Scotch-Irish banking family. And their financial stability allowed Cassatt the opportunity to pursue a career as an artist.
And I'm just going to editorialize a little bit there, as is so often the case with a lot of the women artists that we studied, because remember, at that time, a woman's financial security and social status really was predicated on her ability to marry well, or even better, marry up. But since they were wealthy, that was not an issue for her. And also because her parents were wealthy, she, like the rest of her siblings, was able to attend the best private schools.
Yes. She started when she was 6 years old, and in 1860, at the age of 16, Cassatt began her studies at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. And remember, at that time, Philadelphia was the second largest city in the United States, and it was the oldest arts center. She studied there for 2 years during the Civil War. And it's hard to imagine anyone studying anything during the war, but she did. And she was one of the best in her class, and she knew she wanted a career in art, but initially her family objected to that.
Yes, and from what I read, her father continued to object to it until the end, but her mother not. Okay, they had been hoping, both of her parents, that her early schooling would prepare her to be a proper, well-rounded wife and mother with courses in homemaking, embroidery, music, and sketching. They didn't expect her to take it so seriously. But so when she decided to go to art school, her parents were concerned because they thought she would be exposed to dangerous feminist ideas and bohemian behavior.
It's not surprising then that Thought got impatient with the slow pace of instruction and the patronizing attitude of male students and teachers. She actually said there was no teaching at the academy. For example, female students weren't allowed to use live models, so the principal training was drawing from plaster casts.
Isn't that something? It makes sense that Cassatt was then asked her parents to support her training abroad. In 1865, a year after her request, she finally moved to Paris with her mother and family friends as chaperones, because, of course, no young lady could go traveling by herself. And she became part of the first group of post-Civil War artists to seek professional training in Paris.
Right. She had first traveled to Europe when she was 7 years old, but then at 22, she went back. And Cassatt had such a supportive mother. Can you imagine traveling with your daughter to Europe just to encourage her art career?
Wow, how lucky for her. When I moved to New York City, I was completely on my own. But travel had always been an integral part of Cassatt's family and her education. From 7 to 11, she encountered the artists of France and Germany like James McNeill Whistler, John Singer Sargent, and other and James McNeill Whistler, and because they're American, John Singer Sargent, and other Americans who lived abroad. As those who had lived there as children, and like Cassatt, who had been traveling there as a child, they developed an interest in expatriate life at a really young age.
Right. In France, she became familiar with artists like Courbet, Corot, Delacroix, Ingres, among other French masters. And then that's where she met her future colleagues, Edgar Degas and Camille Pissarro. And she took private lessons with a professor at the École des Beaux-Arts because the school wouldn't allow women students at that time.
Isn't that something? Wow. Things have changed. It seems like Cassatt really knew how to make the best of her opportunities. Yeah. Nothing stood in her way because she always found alternative types of training. And her family could, of course, pay for it. That did help. On a daily basis, Cassatt copied at the Louvre and painted in the countryside. And later, when she traveled to Italy, she studied with the engraver Carlo Raimondi, who gave her this advice, and this is beautiful. Don't be disheartened. Remember, you can do anything you want to.
That's the best kind of teacher. She had plenty of support in Europe, didn't she? The Paris Salon accepted her paintings in 1872, 1873, and 1874, by which time she had her own studio there, and she was considered an established artist. But still, she was ambivalent about the Paris art scene, as you can imagine.
Well, yeah, that's understandable because she kept submitting work to the Paris Salon for over 10 years and became increasingly frustrated when her work was rejected. So the time was right then for her to make a major change. And she and Degas had become friends, and she was influenced by his work. So she began painting in an entirely new way.
Yeah, it was Edgar Degas who invited her to exhibit her work with the Impressionists. And Cassatt loved meeting other painters who thought more like her. And they all pretty much got along, which is unusual. She was the only American, and she was happy she could work without considering the opinion of a critical conservative jury.
Mm-hmm. And it's not always the case that artists get along. Sometimes they can be very competitive. Okay, so this seems like a good time to start looking at her paintings. And the first one we're going to show you is her first major work in the Impressionist manner, which is a portrait of her mother, who had been such a profound influence on her. And yes.
I thought it was the artist herself. And that's the reason that I asked the first question about her.
Yes.
Yeah, here she is. So that's, I was wondering who would have painted her if she was if she's the artist. So that's her mother.
Yes.
Okay. That is, she was an older lady then.
Yes.
Can you see it?
You don't see it? I put it on the screen. No. You don't see it?
I think you have to screen share possibly.
Yeah, we need the screen share.
You have it?
No.
Okay, let's see what we have here, because I share the screen and for some reason it doesn't seem to be showing. Okay. What happened to the screen share? I have it set up and now suddenly I'm looking for it and
well, I think we can just keep talking about
it. I'm looking for it because we have it already. I set it up and I don't see it. Yeah, but you said that it is her mother, that's older lady.
Yeah.
And that's in the image.
Yes, and the picture is called Mrs. Robert S. Cassatt, the artist's mother. And it was done in 1889. And in this painting, this is a beautiful painting. You can really see the Impressionism starting to show up in her work. In this painting, the subject gazes thoughtfully as she supports her head with her hand. And in her other hand, she clutches a handkerchief. For the background, Cassatt uses loose painterly brushstrokes to suggest flowers, maybe a mirror, and even her mother's shawl kind of disappears into the background. The most finished part parts are her face and her hands.
Okay. So she didn't say how old her mother was in that picture.
No, but it's a good point that
There it is. I see it now.
it's a good point to ask about her age, because in fact 6 years after this painting was completed, her mother did die. But let's take another look at the way she caught the character of her mother, by the gesture and by the detailed attention to the face and hands. And
Oh, I love the way she focuses on that. Yeah, you really get a sense of the way the mother is, her personality.
And I also love the monochromatic palette. Like, there's no outstanding reds or blues. It's kind of earth tones and blacks and creamy whites, and it's just a very luscious painting.
She's
And
paying tribute to the strength of love and respect that she had, or that they had for each other.
indeed.
And the outfit the way she portrayed the outfit, it looks like it's a picture and not just a painting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, she like Degas was an expert draftsperson. That's a thing that they had in common. They both really knew how to draw well.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at another Cassatt masterpiece, if we can, called Little Girl in a Blue Armchair.
Okay, so I have that.
Let's see if we can see that one.
Little girl.
It was made in 1878, a little before the one of her mother.
Okay, so
And in that painting, you can really see the influence of Edgar Degas, and he may have even worked on that painting. And Cassatt relied on his feedback, saying in a letter that he was the only man I know whose judgment would be a help to me. And Cassatt and Degas formed a bond that allowed them to encourage each other artistically for nearly 40 years until he died. And hopefully we can see the painting.
Yes, I'm getting in there. So for some reason, when I leave it open, it doesn't stay. So this is the girl on the blue dress. Blue chair.
Yeah, and it's blue furniture.
Yeah. Here it is.
The painting depicts a room full of blue matching furniture.
You see it?
Not yet.
No, it's in there because it's part of the sharing screen. Okay, here it is.
Not yet. There it is.
There it is.
Got it. A little girl sprawls across an armchair, legs akimbo. Her dog rests in another chair. And what strikes me is how relaxed and unselfish this little girl is. She doesn't care about her posture and that we see her petticoats. Until Cassatt, it's not often that we see a child painted so informally. And in fact, this picture caused a scandal. The girl's physicality made people uncomfortable. It was too revealing for them. And for some people, it foreshadowed female sexuality. But but Cassatt didn't expect that. She just wanted to show that this girl is not aware of social conventions and she's pure and unfettered. So it's funny how the audience sees something different depending on who you are.
Yeah, because the child, they show you that the child uninhibited. Just
yes, yeah. She's just tired.
But they are captured. And
yes.
That's what, it's good to have that kind of freedom, because artists usually they have that issue when they have people dictating what they should, how they should use their art, what they should do with their art or their painting.
And Cassatt really wasn't interested in just showing us pretty pictures. She wanted to show people who are natural, and that's what this girl is. She's just showing her relaxed and being very comfortable
without a care in the world.
Right. And that's very impressionist, the spontaneous moment. Because don't forget, before that in painting, there was a history of, having to have exalted subject matter, Greek gods or Roman something or Christian themes. It had to be posed and staged. And so this was a very different way of coming to painting, and a very different way to approach the subject matter, and the way the subject matter behaves within the context of the painting. But what I love here is the beautiful brushwork of the. I think we have one more painting before the Loge.
Oh, yeah. Could we have Maternal Caress?
Yes. There it is.
There it is. Oh, great.
Yes, great. Good job.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm impressed that you're able to do that, because I know I wouldn't be able to. So in this painting, which is called
We are learning, and we have three. That's the
We Are Learning. That is
we're adding more knowledge to our
Yeah.
learning process. So, and I hope that our audience is more what's the word? Sympathetic.
Yes, of
We are
course.
using the technology. So that's the mother.
Yes, and in this painting from 1896, so it's a few years later than either of the previous paintings, the mother and child are painted so up close and personal rather than in a distanced view. And it's framing their rounded forms to limit external distractions. So you really it's like a close-up in a film, you know. Although this scene does recall medieval and Renaissance compositions of the Madonna and Child, Cassatt has increased the sense of intimacy. That is the subject matter, the intimacy. And the perspective over the mother's shoulder. The child reaches up to explore her mother's face and stares into her eyes. And the mother returns her gaze. And, you know, everybody who's ever had a child has had that moment where the child is looking up at you like that and touching your face. It's such a beautiful exchange.
She captured that very well, because sometimes when you see the child enjoying life, and as a mother, you can see the joy. She's responding with the same joy. You see how she holds the mother's face?
Yes.
Yeah. And again, it's not a pretty picture. I mean, who wants to see their face squished up like that? But what Mary Cassatt's really getting at is a natural moment, something that's very serious and true.
And I'd love the way. I'm sorry, Carline. Go ahead.
This is the impact. Painting something at the moment. It's just like you see something that happened, you capture it with a video or a picture. So she's showing you what exactly is going on at that moment.
Exactly. Yes.
Yes, well said. Exactly. And one of the things that I love too is the way the mother is gripping the child's arm. So you really get this sense of their bond and the sense of security that exists for the child. And to such a degree that the mother and child are completely unaware of our presence. Whereas in previous times, the subject matter, the people who were painted would be looking out at us or looking at something significant, you know, an exalted object or something to show their status. But in this case, they're completely unaware, and we're just looking into their intimate moment.
Right. We've almost become intruders as viewers because we're not part of the picture at all. And it really, you're right, it emphasizes the bond between the mother and child. Cassatt's paintings, pastels, and prints demonstrate her personal philosophy that women should be someone, not something. And you really get that sense here, you know. In domestic scenes, Cassatt explores the lives and occupations of women, showing them as active and engaged in the moment. In keeping with Impressionist themes, she shows women reading, bathing children, enjoying tea, riding in a carriage. They're not just enjoying being looked at as objects.
So why was she so concerned about painting women?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. Maria and I have not really discussed this fully. I mean, I'd be glad to hear your opinion on that, Maria. I'm just guessing it's because that was what she was most exposed to in her family and her friends.
Yeah, I think that's the world she knew best. You know, even though she wasn't a mother herself, she was around mothers. And I think she was just interested in women's world because that's what she knows.
No, she knows.
And she was an upper class woman, so she didn't show women in brothels And she didn't show them in bars because that wasn't where she went, you know?
Now, there is another image of her paintings that the woman
Right.
theater.
Yeah, do we have time for one more?
Yeah, one more. Here she is right there.
Oh, great.
Do you have it?
There's so many wonderful paintings,
Yeah.
but in the Loge, the one that you're going to bring up next, it's also
There
known
it is.
it's also known as At the Opera.
Yeah.
And this one is from a little bit earlier, 1878, and I love this painting. This might be this is her first French Impressionist painting to be exhibited in the United States, and it expresses appreciation for the role of theater arts in the late 19th century. It was quite an event. It was a very social event. You went there to see and be seen. And in this painting, a woman sits in her private box in a Parisian theater, and she stares intently through her binoculars at someone or something directly across from her. And in her other gloved hand, she holds a Japanese fan, and that relates to Mary Cassatt's interest in Japanese woodblocks, and all of the impressions were yes. Sorry.
No, that's really good. A good point to make. She really loved Japanese art, and it was very in vogue at that time. And Japanese influences would include surface pattern, the use of everyday subject matter, vibrant colors, flat plane forms, and fragmented views. And just over her shoulder, a wall separates her box from the one next to hers, and the stage is hidden from our view, encouraging us to imagine the spectacle happening below.
Indeed. And
we are winding down to a few minutes.
Okay, well,
how was Paris important to Mary? Because it seems like most of artists, African American or women, they always find a niche in the arts in Paris and France. So how was that important to her?
Well, Paris at that time was the center of the art world, at least for Western art, you know, and it was also the center of fashion. And you can see how Mary Cassatt is very interested in clothing and showing us what's in Paris. She really felt she was in the center of the world there.
Yeah, that's a beautiful picture. Painting.
Yeah.
She painted that woman in the theater, sitting, and she's not accompanied by anybody. She was
right.
herself. So she was free to be in public.
Exactly.
Not to feel some kind of embarrassment because she's by herself, because in those early days, every woman has to have a companion or something.
Exactly, yes. And it's interesting too, because like we said before, usually women were supposed to be looked at as objects, and she's the one doing the looking. You know, she's in control.
That's it.
And if you look in the background there, it's hard to discern, but there's a man looking at her, and she could care less about him. She's busy looking at somebody else. And I think that's a great way to really encapsulate how she was much more interested in the woman as an active participant in life rather than something to be viewed.
Right. The women are not on display, so to speak.
I said this figure here that I'm moving over is the man that you are referring to?
Yes. Yeah.
It looks like it's looking at her.
He is.
And who's looking? She was doing the looking, you know, on her own binoculars. So she didn't mind about anybody else. So now we are approaching less than a minute. Do we have any final words that we have to say about our next artist we want to honor?
Well, I was thinking we could, we're going in chronological